Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Commute Talk. It is super early Tuesday morning here. It's Swedish morning darkness, typical of winter, which is very, very nice. But I won't be able to post this until later today because I'm going to be out the whole day. But anyway, today Winterton writes in asking about learning styles, I suppose. If I think that it's the best way to learn is to watch someone else programming and then watch them typing and working out everything and then sort of copy and imitate what they do. And he's also asking if I think that in order to understand something, like truly understand something, do you need to implement it yourself? And I think these are fantastic questions, so thank you for bringing those up. When it comes to styles of learning, I think that everyone probably has their own best style of learning, perhaps, but the imitation thing certainly works best for me. And I've tried going to school, I've tried taking classes, doing tutorials, these type of things. I've tried reading books, but ultimately the thing that works best for me is to just see someone doing the thing I want to do and then copy that over and then copy it and do that over and over, tweaking little things along the way until I develop my own style of doing it. And that's certainly how I learned programming way back when, although I wasn't like literally watching someone type every character, although it would have been amazing if I could. I just didn't have access to someone doing that. And that's kind of, that's a big part of why I make this content that I do, is because I want to provide that for other people, especially someone who is just starting out and has made it past the beginner stage, and they want to see some programming, see what's possible, and get some inspiration and some ideas, and just get a feel for, I guess, the cadence of it, if that makes sense. Because one thing that's always missing from text tutorials and textbooks and stuff is that you don't get this physicality of seeing someone like clack the keys one by one. There's something just very human about that way of learning, I think. And I really like it. And thanks to the magic of the internet, we can do this at scale, which is really cool. So I guess if you're here on my channel, then you already agree with this to some extent. So I don't think that it's the only way to learn, but it is a fantastic way to learn if the person is receptive to it. Yeah. But when someone is receptive to textbook learning, then it's probably better for them to go that route. But at the same time, having a little bit of both probably wouldn't hurt either, because even though I find it really boring and dull to read books, even about programming, I still do it sometimes, just because it's just always good to pick up a little bit of extra information left and right, because there's always room for more info, and you don't know what's going to be interesting. So, but yeah, definitely a good way of learning. And then you're asking about if I think that in order to understand something, you need to implement it yourself. And I do tend to think so. I think that building scale models of things, or miniature models, is probably my favorite way of building understanding of concepts. So that's what I do, and that's what I do on this channel, and that's what I do with my pet projects, I guess. I think that in order to really understand something, you can study something and work with it and modify it, and that'll get you quite far. But there's like a scale to it, right? Where you can read something over and over, like a piece of code. You read a piece of code over and over, and you can build some understanding of it. But once you start to modify the code, your understanding will increase so much, because all those assumptions in your head, you start to to actually test them by seeing if you can make sane modifications to it. And then there's another tier where you say like, okay, well, what if I lose the whole piece of code and I have to rebuild it myself? Like, do I have a good enough understanding of this concept that I can implement it myself? And I think maybe in between those two steps is explaining it to someone else, I'm not sure where that step is. Maybe it's you can read the code and think you understand it, you can explain it to someone else, and now they think they understand it. You can make modifications to the code, and they seem to work the way you intend them to work. And then finally, you can throw away the code and build it yourself. And there really is a fantastic level of understanding you can build by doing this. But of course, it's not always practical. Some things are very, very large, and it's not practical to implement your whole thing by yourself. But it is often very practical to build a miniature model, which I'm a huge fan of. So, what would be an example? Like say that you look at something like these early 3D shooter games, right? Like Wolfenstein. And it's certainly possible to write a little raycasting graphics engine where you can render some walls and walk around in a room. Maybe you don't even do any textures. You can definitely do that, and doing that yourself will build a much better understanding of how raycasting works and how the games of that era worked and what kind of constraints and concerns that they had, and just how to think inside of that box. You will understand it so much better after you implement it than you ever did from reading it, even if you think you understand it from reading it. So yeah, I think that I will agree that I think to fully understand something, you have to implement it, or you have to at least be able to implement it. And the only way you'll know that you're able to is by doing it. But maybe people disagree with me on this. It's not something that I've talked with many people about, but I certainly have the feeling that people would probably agree with this. And I know in the past I've thought that I understood how something works. Even recently, like I thought I understood how WebKit worked in some aspects, and now that I'm building my own browser engine from scratch, I start to notice that, oh, well, my understanding of WebKit was totally flawed and patchy and sketchy. And it's good. It's a really good feeling to sit there and work it out manually. Like, how the heck does this thing work then, if my assumptions were wrong? Because I think that many programmers, they go through their whole lives only ever calling other people's APIs and using ready-made libraries and frameworks and stuff. And you can do that, but you will never appreciate the art in the same way as someone who has been through the process of building all of those things. And at least that's just my feeling about it. So I seek this understanding. I seek the complete comprehension of software by working with it, by implementing my own versions of things. And I think that it is a pursuit worth undertaking. I think it's a beautiful thing, and it's really fun, really intellectually stimulating, and I don't see anything wrong with it. Like, the main criticism, I guess, that you do see from people is that, well, you're just reinventing the wheel, You're just doing something that already exists. What's the point? And the point is to learn and to appreciate the art. I saw someone saying somewhere that if you are a songwriter, why would you write a song about love? There are already songs about love. And it's kind of silly, right? Every artist has a right and maybe even an obligation to engage with the art to his fullest capacity, to himself. I mean, the obligation is to yourself, not to anyone else. But make the most of your passion, man. If you really want to understand something, then you gotta give it your all and seek the level of understanding that matches your expectations. Yeah. Wow. I feel so different when it's totally dark outside. It's a totally different vibe to the commute. It's almost like it's nighttime and I'm about to go to sleep. But instead I gotta go do some like team building exercises and onboarding or something. I'm not sure, but I'm definitely not excited because I don't get to use my computer the whole day. But anyways, I'm sure it's going to be fine. And I'm sure I'm going to have fun once it gets started. It's just, you know how it is. Like, before you're in something, it can sometimes seem overly difficult from the outside. Anyways. I guess that's that. So I'm just going to say thank you again for asking the questions. They are very interesting questions. And something worth thinking more about, I think. And thanks to everyone for hanging out with me on the commute. I will see you all next time. Bye.